All right. There we go. I think it's straight. I'm sorry if it's crooked sometimes. It's so hard to tell on that little screen. I try to line up the lines with this thing. Bubble wrap everywhere. This place is in need of a serious cleaning. I just got back from El Horrifico's crib, and something finally happened. We finally wrapped up another deal, 2 out of 2 that he's been dangling in front of me for a decade, literally. At least 9 years plus. And as you know, if you're watching the channel recently, you know I got the Karloff from Carlos. Arguably the finest Karloff known in the entire mask world. One of them. I'm not gonna say it's the greatest, but there are people that will say that is the best Karloff you can find. It's just gorgeous. It is a pristine master copy from the original master. But today, he intended on selling me both masks over the years, and lots of discussion has went down. And he backed out many times, and I don't blame him because these were his babies. This one and this one were his prized possessions. And it's very tough for a man to let go of his prized possessions, you know, if that's the best, it's in his opinion, the best pieces he had in his collection. And I want to thank him for sticking to his word. There were other big collectors out there that really wanted both of these. I get it. They're beautiful. They're important pieces. Carlos and I have maybe a little different friendship than some of the guys because we hang out in person. He's been to my house several times. We do road trips, and you know, it is what it is. But it's I'm happy and very grateful that the masks ended up here. I said, Carlos, there's plenty of guys that will buy them, but at least you can come see them here. You can come here. They're still going to be here because they are vintage Frankenstein heads, Frankenstein monster heads. Don't want to get corrected by the YouTube Frankenstein police. But, and one more thing, you know, regarding the whole Frankenstein thing, I brought this up over and over and over. Guys will skim through some of my videos if they've never really seen the channel, and they'll just kind of catch up on little things I say, and they'll show me going, oh, look at my Frankenstein mask. This is Frankenstein. And of course, I'd say Frankenstein monster not far before that or after that. And they got to run in the comments, you know, crying, it's the Frankenstein monster. What do you know? You know, I am the guy that made the famous mistake on Collector's Call, which was a total mistake, not even thinking mistake, not lack of knowledge mistake, just brain fried mistake. But when it comes to the Frankenstein monster, you know, as kids, everyone called him Frankenstein. Okay, each and every one of you out there, I guarantee you, even the most prestigious universal collectors on the planet called him Frankenstein when you were a kid. And there's no way you didn't. What? What the? Oh, all right, fine. Get hair all over me. And you know, yeah, we know the story. It's a very old story. We all know it. Okay, he's the monster. Yeah. I just got one question for you guys out there that love to cry about that fact and correct other people, saying it's the Frankenstein monster. I know. So let's take this movie title, for instance. Can you explain this to me? Mr. Perfect. What do you make of this? Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So what do you have to say about that, Mr. Smarty Pants? Nobody was crying about the technicalities then, were they? Enough is enough. Be quiet about it already. On this channel, I call it both. Back to the video here. So, the second mask, Carlos, I had to pry from his cold, grubby little fingers, was this beautiful Glenn Strange. And you probably have seen it on the channel a few times at least. He's brought it for show and tell. And this is indeed the 1999 Paint Master for the Don Post reissue, the calendar reissue masks. This was the Paint Master that sat there, and they based all of the paint jobs on the Glenn Stranges in your collections off of this one. This thing has slightly rusted over time. I wonder if any of that is even removable. Probably not. But I have removed rust from masks carefully. But the paint scheme on this thing was so beautiful. And it does have a nice patina to it. It's aged. What I always said on my channel was it almost looks like baby blue in the cracks. You know, if you really look at it from a glance. At glance, it looks like baby blue in all the cracks. And I'm assuming it's a very light gray base. But man, the thing is just so... I don't know how to explain it. It's so gritty looking in a way. It's just a raw looking Glenn Strange with gorgeous detail. Because this is from the reissue master. And we'll just show you. I'm being very careful. Master, 1999, okay? These did not come out in 98. The two Frankenstein monsters came out like a year later or so. So Master, 99. This is larger in size than the reissue masks. You've got a lot bigger because all of those reissue masks were tiny. They are not intended for human usage to stick over your head and trick or treat with. They were just produced as a collectible. Those masks are so small, and I can't stand that they were that tiny. Some guys would hack up the back of a Phantom of the Opera reissue trying to fit it over their head, and I think a lot of people didn't realize they were not intended to be worn as a Halloween mask, only collected as a collectible, which is pretty lame if you ask me, coming from the great Don Post Studios. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that is the reissue that is retooled, resculpted in areas. I believe they worked off of the original Pat Newman. Well, I'm so foggy on a lot of the reissue detailing and what Darren was doing at the time at the studio. But what I'm still getting at is this is an original casting from the 60s Pat Newman Glenn Strange plaster mold. So the calendar mold, the real deal plaster mold that was laying around since the 60s. They still had it. They made some final castings. This is one of the last castings to come out of that mold as well. I want to show you that this master copy, even though it's the reissue version with the different, it's got different detailing, more detailing on the eyelids, a lot more lines coming down the cheeks. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous end result for that project. I'm not knocking that mask at all. I'm just knocking the size of them, really. But this sucker is just as big as a 66 Glenn Strange, okay? Because these are out of the exact 60s mold. So that is quite impressive when looking at this Paint Master. This may distort things a little bit, but man, at the time there were two of these, right? Is there two? Is there two of these? There's two of those. No, I got a picture of two of them and two Karloffs and two Glenn Strange prototypes. This was a Paint Master, so I believe it was the only paint scheme made. I'll have to ask Uncle Evil on that. Regardless, gorgeous hair work done by none other than Mask Kahuna, who, I'm telling you, does the finest Frankenstein hair in all the land. I mean, he is a perfectionist when it comes to laying on Frankenstein hair. And I could spot his work a mile away. Like, yep, this one's... So that was one interesting thing when comparing it, when I got it home. This hasn't been here in a long time. But when I brought it home, I'm like, man, it is the same size, basically, as a 60s Glenn Strange production mask, which is really cool. See all that nice detailing in there? I have to carefully, let me put him sideways carefully. All right, let's look at this sucker. See all that nice details? And that's the sad thing about these. So this came out of the 60s mold in 83 as a prototype. This came out of the 60s mold in 99 when they were working on all this stuff, because that's the prototype that sat side by side with this one when they're looking with Universal. Like, here's the Karloff, here's the Glenn Strange. Those are the two prototypes. But all those years later, you guys that know the 66 Monster Calendar, the famous Monster Calendar photo of this mask, oh no, it has all that crazy detailing that it was able to be, you know, it was really contrasted by the two colors of paint they used. I think they could have drawn some of the lines in, but I think a lot of them were actual sculpture lines. And unfortunately, these two beautiful pieces are lacking a lot of those old details that were there in the mid-60s. This does have nice details, especially on the eyelids still. They're a little lighter on the later copy. But I mean, look at the difference here going to the reissue. Even on the forehead, there's a lot of nice lines going on. And it is quite... it does remind me of the calendar page photo, even though it's a different, different version. Let's put this back. Yeah, Paint Master, basically, they would make a Paint Master. They would agree on the paint scheme, like, that's it. Let's paint them all like that, right? And then that Paint Master would sit there in the studio as every single 98 reissue was painted up. And any mask in here most likely had a Paint Master that the Tharps would make or someone in the studio would make. And then the painters, the Tharps weren't painting every single mask at times. A lot of them they did, but there were other painters there. And once that Paint Master was on the shelf, people could look at it as reference, So, I do have another one of the 98 reissue Paint Masters, and you've probably seen me talk about it before. And that is this old boy right here. Karis, the Mummy. Not the 1932 Boris Karloff classic, no. But I can't remember who sold me this. At the time, there were two Paint Master mummies. I'm assuming there's Mummy A and Mummy B Paint Masters. This one, they did not write it outside the mask, but let me carefully show this to you. Underneath that sticker, you can see marker where it says Master was written there before they threw that sticker over it. No doubt the real Paint Master. I think I know where the other one could be sitting. Now, someone bought that one, never mind. Either way, it's so cool to have two reissue Paint Masters here. I've had a lot of the reissue masks over time. I either sold them or repainted them or traded them off, because the sizes were just small and I wasn't happy with the color schemes on some of them, but overall, with the crazy prices Don Post masks can bring, that is your best bet in finding those old masks that they reissued, I always wanted to get a full set of the reissues in the boxes, and with the way things are here, with room and everything, there's no way I could even house them anywhere. So yeah, Carlos, thank you. I know it wasn't easy. I know we actually butted heads over the past few days, and we got little arguments at times. But we finally did it. I know there's other collectors out there that really wanted these. I appreciate you selling them to me. They are in a very good home, and I will take very good care of them. Weird stuff happens when things like this land in your hands. When you're a collector, you'll get, it's very strange to me, but guys that I know very well that are in my circle of people in my mask group, you got to learn mask etiquette, mask collecting etiquette. I know this is a crazy channel and I'm nuts at times, and I could be goofy and joking and off the wall, but I'm telling you what, I am pretty serious when it comes to other collectors and not overstepping boundaries. You know, yeah, I talk shit about a lot of people if they talk shit about me, but the last thing you want to do, maybe I could teach you something, is if someone buys a great piece and it's of this caliber, any of these caliber masks, the last thing you want to do is go to the seller that sold it to their friend, like Carlos is my friend, and go, why did you sell that to him? I would have paid you so much money for that. Like, that's not cool. Like, what are you doing? Are you hoping to get the other one that wasn't in my possession yet? And I'm like, the whole community, at least in the Don Post groups, know how Carlos and he was jerking me around for a decade on these, and other collectors. Like, I know a lot of other guys that went through the same shit. Now, I'm not knocking Carlos. He's a special boy. But that's not cool. It's not cool to go, oh my God, you did it again. Why did you sell Rudy that? You know, I would have paid you a lot of money for that. Do you not think I paid Carlos a lot of money for these? The money I gave him for these two masks, there should be a third prototype sitting next to them. Okay? Don't think I didn't pay like, you think I ripped Carlos off? I paid him crazy money. Where other collectors are like, I wouldn't pay that. I'm like, well, if Carlos is selling them, there's a reason he's selling them. Finally is pulling the trigger. I'm not going to dick around. I'm going to pay him what I told him I would pay him, you know, from back in the day, and we settled on it. So you don't do that shit, man. Why did you sell that to him? Why? Well, oh my God, I would have paid you a lot for that. And you're in my groups. Like, these people are in my group. You don't think Carlos tells me every single thing? It's just weird, man. I wouldn't do that if he sold you something. I wouldn't be like, why'd you do that? Why'd you sell it? Why'd you sell it to that dude? You know, I would have paid you way more, dude. No, somebody's got it. You're not changing the fact that it's in my hands now, you know. It's just weird. Some people may say no big deal, but it's kind of strange moments after it sells. Like, why? Why would you sell? Why would he sell it to me? We've been trying to do this deal for a decade. Everyone knows that. You know, I'm a collector of vintage Frankenstein monsters. I've got a lot of them. It's kind of my thing, in a way, you know, like, it only makes sense. I was going after these hardcore, and it makes sense he would sell them to me. There's other guys that collect similar stuff. I'm not arguing that I'm the only guy. But when you're clearly not that guy, it's kind of weird. Like, what, do you want to flip him? Are you mad that you couldn't get your hand? It's just strange to me. Oh, strange. Get it? Get it? All right, enough of my babbling. This was a quick one. We're supposed to be playing Bloodsport on the big screen tonight. Private showing. Yes. So that is very exciting to me. To go once again and watch the Kumite on the big screen. I told him we should watch Double Impact to do a double feature. Mr. Black Silk Underwear. All right, guys, thank you. Good night. And more vintage masks and mask news coming soon.